Welcome back to another episode of the Huxley Morton Podcast, the show where I'm bringing you interviews from some of the world's most ambitious, innovative pharma company owners and industry leaders who have all agreed to share both their personal and professional stories of growth. This week, I'm joined by Carmela Mascio, CEO of LivOnyx. Carmela, welcome to the show. Give us a little bit more of an insight as to who you are and I guess what you guys are doing over at LivOnyx.
Yeah, well, James, thank you for the opportunity to be here, and to the entire Huxley Morton team for the invitation. I'm both honored and humbled to be able to share my story with you. So what we're doing at LivOnyx is so long before the pandemic, we prioritized infection prevention, specifically hand hygiene in hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the recognition that 1 out of every 25 patients that's going into the hospitals come out with an infection they didn't have to start with, we wanted to try to come up with a way of innovating how hand hygiene is currently done. So we're developing a novel hand hygiene device that will be more effective, meaning it's going to get more of the pathogens or germs that are in the hospitals are currently not addressed. It is going to be safer, so we're going to minimize the amount of damage done to hands using current methods, and it's going to be faster. So we're going to be able to do this in just 3 seconds. And so that's really what our mission is to develop a novel hand hygiene device that's going to be used in hospital settings in order to prevent infections from spreading.
Amazing stuff. Well, look, I think all very relevant, particularly at this time where over the last year, everyone's been washing their hands a ton, ripping them to shreds at times because they're so dry. So look, we'll come on to more about what you're doing at LivOnyx. But look, first of all, a bit of a rewind. I always like to hear sort of people's backstories. How on earth did you first get into the industry? And perhaps this specifically, I mean, did you always plan to kind of go down this route, or has there been various hurdles, twists and turns along the way?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So the people that know me well know that I absolutely love superheroes and I love their origin story. So whenever I have the opportunity to share mine, it just makes me ridiculously happy.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I have your typical entrepreneur phenotype or story. So I have a very, very strong childhood memory of being with my dad at work one day. And so some background with my parents. They're Italian immigrants. They moved here separately in their youth. They met in
Hence the name.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they met in East Boston. And they separately wanted to, how do I say this without sounding cheesy, it's following the American dream, right? They moved to America with these big aspirations. And so my dad started his own construction company. So it was called Creston Sons Excavating. I have 2 older brothers. And so he was a one-man operation excavating properties to put then foundations and clearing lots and that kind of thing. And so I was really fortunate that in the summers I got to go to work with him. And so I remember I was 9 years old.
Yeah.
We were on a dirt haul. And so we were in the dump truck and we had just pulled all of this dirt out of some property in order to dig the foundation. And so I'm hopping along in the truck and I look over at my dad and I'm beaming and I was like, I can't wait to grow up and to go into construction, Dad.
Yeah.
And at that point in my life, I had never seen my dad angry. So I'm the youngest of 3 and the only girl. So to say that I was the princess is an understatement in my dad's eyes. And he turned every shade of red and he got so angry and he said in a very gritted teeth way, I did not move to this country to work like a dog to have you end up like me. You're going to college and you're making something of yourself. Oh, okay, Dad. And so that voice has kind of stayed with me all along. And so at that young age, I realized I loved science, but not having exposure to scientists or the field in general, I thought, okay, well, if you like science, you either become a doctor or a veterinarian or a dentist, because that's where my mind went to. I knew pretty quickly I didn't want to be a doctor because I do not like the sight of blood. I did not want to become a veterinarian once I found out that sometimes you have to put animals to sleep.
Yeah.
And so that left dentist.
Mm.
And so fast forward to when I enrolled in college, I was in the pre-dental program,
Uh-huh.
and I had an amazing biology professor for my freshman year. And
Yeah.
so this was a large class, over 300 students. And this is how I feel like everyone had a teacher at some point that just motivated them to really become who they are.
Mm.
And so for me, it was Dr. Charles Walker at the University of New Hampshire, where he was a very gregarious and untraditional teacher, where professor wearing tie-dyed t-shirts, and he would run across the stage with excitement with what he was sharing. And I remember the day him talking about DNA.
Kind of
And
maybe like, is it like the stereotypical cool teacher that you see on films? It sounds like he's one of those sort of characters, was he?
yeah, I mean, he was just a class of his own, honestly. I couldn't compare him to anyone. I would say he was untraditional, because I feel
Mm.
like in the sciences, sometimes on film, like you see, you know, old men in lab coats with warts on their faces, and
Yeah.
for Dr. Walker, he was just, he would wear tie-dyed shirts and he rollerbladed into class. He was just very untraditional and just so full of life,
Mm.
and stuff. And the day that he talked about DNA, he's just running around the stage and he's talking about these proteins, the histones that can turn the DNA into something you can't see with the most powerful microscope. And I
Yeah.
found myself literally sitting at the edge of my seat going, I want to be a dentist. I want to do what that guy does.
Yeah.
And so that was really a change of moment for me. And so I changed out of the pre-dental program, and I went and I spoke to him during his office hours. And he was kind enough to share all the different professors at the university that would be willing to take on undergraduate researchers. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's where I found a passion for microbiology. Is I
Yeah.
got paired with what ultimately became my advisor, and I started doing undergraduate research straight away in my freshman year. And
Wow.
and then from there I started, I had a job that was in it was a contract manufacturing facility, but very small. We were only a 15-person company.
Mm.
And admittedly, I hated everything I was doing when I started working there, because uh, I thought that I was going to be doing research, but because I was really good working in the absence of bacteria, I got put into the
Mm.
actual manufacturing suite and was filling product for clinical trials, which is incredibly important. But I'm a little claustrophobic, so being in a 10-foot by 10-foot room wasn't for me. um,
Yeah.
and stuff. And so then I was there for 2 years, and then looking for a new position, and that's when I stumbled across Cubist, and
Mm-hmm.
I ended up at Cubist, where I got to help be part of inventing new antibiotics for use in acute care. And I got to work with superbugs like MRSA and Clostridium difficile. And so it's this really amazing company. And their primary focus was in antibiotic discovery.
Yeah.
But then during my tenure there, which was about 12 years before it was acquired,
Mm.
we decided that it wasn't enough to develop life-saving antibiotics, and we started a stealth infection prevention project.
Mm-hmm.
And having started that project, I got to co-lead that effort. And then
Just explain that in a bit more detail. So, stealth infection project.
yeah,
What does that mean to, I guess, the general day-to-day person, myself perhaps included? Because it sounds pretty cool.
yeah.
But what does that involve?
Yeah, you're right. It's a great question. So, really, what it was is because Cubist was well known for antibiotic discovery,
Mm.
for us to kind of draw a line in the sand and say it's not enough to develop antibiotics, we want to stop these infections from even happening.
Yeah.
Um, the stealth part was is that we kept that in as a secret. And the reason that we did that was recognizing that there's large pharma companies out there that have significant more people power and
Mm.
um, more in their bank account, that they might just think to themselves, well, that's crazy enough that it might work. And
Yeah.
so for the first 2 years of the project, we really did operate that. Very few people, even within Cubist, knew we were exploring it.
Wow. So
And
you
so,
probably felt a little bit superhero, like, you know, under capes, however it may be, just just a little bit kind of niche in the sense that there was just a small target force team on that project.
Yeah, you know, I never
How
actually.
many of you guys were on that specific stealth project?
Yeah, you know, so it started really small. There was about 7 or 8 of us at the very,
Mm,
very beginning. And then going into our second year, as we started to make it more well known within the company that we were doing this effort, we expanded out to about 20 people.
yeah.
And that was across all the different things. So I led up the biology component of it and had to develop novel assays in order to figure out what we were doing.
Mm,
We brought in engineers from externally because we didn't build things. So we had to bring in that expertise. And within the second year, we started talking to our toxicologists within the firm, our regulatory department, our
mm-hmm.
marketing, our commercialization team. Business development was involved the whole time. And so it was really exciting. We went from a conference room that only held 8 of us to then having to change to a larger one because there were people that were more um, excited about the traction and we were really
What would
making it formal.
Yeah, what were their reactions when it kind of came to light that you guys had been working on something under the radar, and then all of a sudden all these different departments are starting to get involved? You know, so you know the business development team, the regulatory guys. What was what sort of feedback were you getting internally about this?
Yeah, you know, it was really mixed. The majority of it was, this is so cool. I can't believe we're doing it. And then there
Mm,
was the other side of it was like, but we're in the antibiotic discovery business. Why are we doing something that will reduce the amount of infections?
mm,
You know, which is a fair question, but really it was the incredible leadership team at Cubis, so Mike Bonney and Rob Perez, it was really them kind of looking at that crystal ball and saying, what we're doing is critically important, but the organisms and the pathogens or the bacteria, they're always going to evolve and there's always going to be a place for us for antibiotic discovery. We need to
yeah.
stop infections from happening. And so it was really exciting to be part of that and to be sharing that side of the story with it.
Mm,
And then, you know, the other side of it is that when people found out we were doing, they're like, well, what can I do to help? So it was really exciting
nice. Mm,
from that front that people, you know, once they got over that this is this crazy hand hygiene idea, but then the next thought was, well, what can I do? And so it was really just an amazing opportunity to be part of it,
mm-hmm.
and to see the whole concept grow from a very just crazy idea that frankly it stemmed from, I had given a presentation to the senior VP Praveen's kids about how germs are everywhere and hand hygiene is the most important thing we can do.
Yeah,
Uh, and then when he was traveling a short time later, he was at Logan International Airport and he used one of those Dyson air blades and he thought to
yeah.
himself, I don't want to just dry my hands. I want to clean these. I want to invent this. And so that's when
Mm,
he came back to me and wanted to start this crazy project. So
nice.
it's just a really neat kind of a way of coming about. And, you
Yeah.
know, kudos to the management and the executive team who fostered the crazy idea and really let us, you know, have the budget and the people to try it.
Yeah, no, look, definitely. I mean, anytime you've got a manager or a leader like that is kind of prepared to say, okay, you've got a great idea, let's run with it. You know, that just makes you feel so valued within an organization, doesn't it? I think that's what everyone kind of dreams of when they
Yeah.
get out into the workplace. So where did things go for you from there?
So while we were doing the Cubist effort and we were making some incredible traction, we were working on a light-based technology, and so we were very excited about the data that we were generating, the work
Mm,
that we were doing, and at the time, Cubist was also wildly successful in the antibiotic discovery arena, which made us attractive for acquisition. And
right.
so we were acquired, and subsequently, all the research operations were shut down,
Mm-hmm.
which was admittedly completely heartbreaking for me, because I felt so fortunate to be part of the Cubist team and to be
Clearly,
doing,
yeah.
doing incredible science that was really meaningful. Like every day mattered to me when I was there.
Mm,
So when the acquisition happened and we were subsequently let go, I was just like, all right, well, I've lived the biotech dream. I'm gonna go walk dogs. We had just adopted our dog. I was like, I'm just gonna walk dogs.
yeah.
But the engineers that I had worked with, they approached me, and they had talked about, it was just such a shame. We were making some really great traction. We had all these people we wanted to help, and
Mm,
yeah, it's really terrible. And so they asked if I'd be willing to start a company with them to finish what we started, but with a completely different technology.
yeah.
And James, I laughed hysterically. I was like, no, thanks. I was like, I don't.
I'm still preferring the idea of walking dogs.
Yeah, it was really just this. I was like, nope, I had the dream job. I'm not going to recapture that. I'm just gonna make a paycheck now. Thank you for thinking of me, but no thanks.
Mm,
Um, and then my husband and I traveled for a little bit, before I was going to start take like looking for new jobs and stuff.
yeah.
And we're big Lord of the Ring fans, and we were actually on the Shire in Hobbiton, in
Yeah.
New Zealand, and I kept perseverating about the patients and the healthcare workers, that we were going to help. And my husband just looked at me, and he's always just incredibly supportive, and he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I know I'm ruining our vacation. I keep thinking about the project that we were doing and how it's
Mm,
gone." He's like, "But then why aren't you starting the company?" He's like, "You've already did this through Cubis. Like
yeah.
you try to live your life not regretting things, and
Mm,
you're going to regret it if you don't try this." And so when we returned back to the States, I asked to have a meeting with the former CEO, Mike Bonney.
mm,
And I said, it's like, you've known me for the last 12 years. I have zero business starting a business. I kill things for a living. That's what my job had been as a microbiologist. I was like, but I can't stop thinking about the patients and the
mm.
practitioners that we are going to help. And does it make sense to create a company as a standalone entity? And he laughed, which I was like, oh God, I was wrong. I knew I shouldn't have had this conversation. He's like, Carmela, you've already been doing this. He's like,
Mm.
"You're the entrepreneur at Cubis." He's like, this is, yes, we should do this. And so yes, that really helped to give us the push we needed
Massive
to
kind of
formally.
seal of approval from someone that
Yeah,
respected highly, clearly.
yeah, I mean, it made sense for Cubis to do an infection prevention project, right? We are
Hmm.
well known in the industry, very well respected in the hospital industry and everything. And so,
Yeah.
a standalone company, can you really do this? But the reality is that infection prevention has always been incredibly important. We haven't prioritized it since the advent of antibiotics because there's that false sense of security that whatever pathogen comes our way or germ comes our way, that we'll overcome it really quickly.
Mm.
But I think the pandemic has certainly highlighted that that's not always the case. And so
Yeah.
it is in our best interest to be prioritizing infection prevention as much as we prioritize therapeutics and diagnostics and vaccines. Like,
Hmm.
all of those are incredibly important. It's not a one size fits all problem. So yeah, so having that validation from former colleagues really did kind of push the envelope for me to say, okay, we're starting LivOnyx. Here we go. And so the rest is history, so to speak. Of, that was 4.5 years ago, and we're making incredible progress with the science, and now
Mm.
just trying to fundraise for next steps.
So how did you, I guess, find it to start with? I know when I set up the sort of the Huxley Morton business, and you and I have talked about this via email and things about coming up with the names, but there's other elements to it, such as setting up the bank business bank accounts, incorporating the company. There's a lot of little things that perhaps you don't know until you know. Um,
Right.
so how did that go for yourself? Someone who you openly admitted that you weren't a business professional. How did that go? How did you get on in the sort of the very grassroots days of actually setting stuff up?
Yeah, it's interesting because you never know what you don't know, right? And stuff.
Mm,
And so it was a lot of having conversations with former Cubist colleagues that they went on to different things, and some of them
yeah,
ended up at startups. And so we would compare stories. It was a lot of, I'm very fortunate that many of the former Cubist executive team were happy to be advisors and mentors to us and are still.
amazing.
And
Yeah.
so asking them questions about how to get things going. And then a lot of it was just kind of trying to learn and understand from reading different books and reading different websites and listening to podcasts and,
Mm.
like hearing about the startup culture. And, when I started, I had no idea what a convertible note was, or, preferred stock versus your regular stock. And, do you sign up as an LLC or a corporation? And what are the differences in the tax?
Yeah.
So it was just doing a lot of research. And so I learned a lot about myself, and that I joke now that my superpower is that I get things done. So even if I, in the beginning, don't know how I'm going to do it, I will find a way to get it done.
Mm.
And you have to learn really quickly to be comfortable reaching out for the help and asking for it, and then distilling down all the advice that you get from people and
Mm.
figuring out what's your best path moving forward.
And I
Uh,
think that's where you summed up, and that maybe you may not think it yourself, but as like an entrepreneurial character, but you've summed that up spot on for me. Is that you're someone who can get some stuff done, um, and being resourceful is probably the best thing that anyone can have, in their armory. Whether it's looking at YouTube, reading books, there's a ton of things and resources all out there. And if you can just be that person who's like, well, I need to do this, and then trust that person, you're going to get it done, and bet on yourself, that is one of the biggest things, an asset that anyone can have, certainly as an entrepreneur. Whether it's finding someone to help you, whether it's your advisors from Cubist, or doing it yourself, reading the books. I remember when I set up the business, my partner, we probably still got them in the bookshelf here, websites for dummies, and like just crazy little things, because I'm not a tech man. I've always, my job has always been either sporting or, talking. There was no way I was going to be building a website or anything like that. It's just crazy. So the fact that you've, managed to pull that out and just do whatever is needed to be done, I guess, is perhaps why you've been a success. So you're now kind of 4 years on. But going back to the beginning, another thing that you and I have sort of touched on, the name LivOnyx. Where did it come from for you guys?
Yeah, our crazy made up name. I never had expected that with having such a small team that we would struggle so much with creating the name. And I'd say probably for the first 6 months, we just called ourselves Newco because we couldn't decide. So we were just new. And so really what it was is we wanted to pay homage to Cubist in some
Hmm.
regard and have a nod towards them, because that's where we got our start. And really, like, I kind of grew up Cubist, and it's where I
Yeah.
got my training and everything. And so, and I also liked the idea of it having a hidden meaning for us. And
Hmm.
so the semi-precious stone onyx, it means to be focused and disciplined and to live with reason. And in its rarest form is a purple color. So typically onyx is black. And so for me, it was live onyx, to live with focused attention, discipline, and reason. And so that's how we came up with it. So the purple is a nod to Cubist. And then really to just kind of be focused in what we're doing, be
Mm.
disciplined, and above all, to apply reason to what we're doing, because we're trying to save lives.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. And look, I guess we're now, I guess, a few years on from probably all of the headaches that you would have had with that. I've been through it myself, and I if I was to go back, I probably wouldn't want to do it again. Don't get me wrong. Um, talk us through, how does your typical day look these days?
I can't believe I never would have imagined that my day gets driven by my inbox, frankly.
Hmm.
I can plan out my week and feel like, okay, I know that on this day I'm going to work on grant writing. On this day, I'm doing reach outs for fundraising and trying to find
Hmm.
investors. But oftentimes I'll turn on the computer and something will have happened or shifted overnight that then kind of changes the trajectory of your day based on your inbox. Of a fire needs to be put, not a literal fire, we work in a lab very safely, some sort of fire that needs to be put out, or
Mm.
there's a pressing competition that's come to our attention that we want to be able to apply for. And so
Mm.
things constantly change. But I would say in general, it is trying to be responsive when people are reaching out to us, as quickly as we can, but being mindful of the other duties that we have. And then really it is a mix of my team. They're still very focused on driving the science and the engineering forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I've stepped out of the lab, particularly during COVID, because there's limits to how many people can be in the lab space during this
Yeah.
time period. And so I'm focused all on the fundraising aspects of it and reaching out to investors and finding where we fit in appropriately and that kind of thing. So it's a mix every day.
And look, how, I guess, as I said during the beginning of the interview, I guess at the moment, sort of hand sanitizer, staying clear of germs it's huge. It's been on everyone's lips for the past 12 years about washing your hands properly, 20 seconds here, and making sure you don't miss any part of the skin that could perhaps be exposed to the virus. How have things been going for yourself at the moment, in terms of, securing investors and interest and things like this? So, because I'm sure it's had a probably quite a big impact for what you do as a business, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because the pandemic has opened opportunities in some ways while
Mm,
also narrowed some opportunities. The way that it's opened the opportunities is that typically when you're meeting investors, they're happening at large conferences. And so you're trying to secure time with people in between sessions. But by the nature of the expense of the conference and the expense of travel, it's difficult to get a number of those in. But
mm,
because of the pandemic, those conferences went virtual. And so either they were free or they're very, very cost effective to attend. And so
yeah.
it was me and my co-founders that could attend the conferences. And so we could navigate having access to investors at those conferences and those platforms.
Mm-hmm.
So in that regard, it's actually been very helpful. So we've been able to have conversations with people internationally. We've been able to have conversations with the West Coast versus where we are here on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So that's been incredible. The challenging aspect of it is, despite the fact that we're in infection prevention, which is um, everyone's acutely aware of it right now, is
Mm,
that finding the right investor is a challenge for us because we're not a therapeutic. We're
yeah.
not just a device. We are actually a combination product. So our antiseptic
Mm,
will be marketed as will be regulated as a drug, and then we have a deposition device that'll be a device that will be regulated as well.
uh-huh.
So it's finding the right fit. And then in the infection prevention space, it's challenging because you don't have access to reimbursement. And so a lot of investors, when they're looking at the return on investment, they're like, okay, well, this is going to be reimbursed by the hospital setting, so they can do calculations on what
Mm,
the revenue will be. And but as an infection prevention product, we're not eligible for those kind of
right, I see.
and stuff. So it makes it difficult. So you're trying to, I think anytime you're an agent of change, you're having to convince people of the importance of what you're doing, and that you're creating kind of a cognitive dissonance for the status quo. And so a
Mm,
lot of people will think, well, but we just, if people would just wash their hands, it would be fine, or if people would just use hand sanitizer. But the reality is that there hasn't been innovation in the hand hygiene space in over 40 years. And so what's being asked of practitioners like the hospital workers in order to clean their hands can't actually be done well. So when you have germs like Clostridium difficile that are not killed by hand sanitizer, or norovirus, which is not killed by hand sanitizer, and those are both hugely problematic in hospital settings, you need something different. The answer isn't just wash your hands more.
uh-huh.
It's clean your hands differently. And so
Right.
it's changing that thought process. For people, that can be a challenge.
You mentioned neurovirus just then. I know kind of before coronavirus was even a real thing to me. I heard of several people talking about neurovirus. But I thought that there was hand sanitizers and things that now kill that. Am I, again, ignorant to that? Am I
No, I mean, so
into,
here in the States, most hand sanitizers active ingredient is some form of alcohol.
uh-huh.
It'll be anywhere between 62 to 90% alcohol, depending on
Yeah.
the product and the formulation. It does not work against norovirus. So that's why it
Wow.
ends up becoming very problematic. You hear a lot of in kind of mainstream norovirus affecting cruise ships. So people will be on a family vacation and the entire
Yeah.
cruise ship goes down with norovirus.
I've seen
Um,
a couple of documentaries on that recently. I love them.
yeah, yeah, and stuff. And so yeah, so unfortunately they don't have activity against norovirus, and norovirus in particular, it takes a very small amount of number of viruses to actually make you sick, and it's highly communicable. So it's
Mm.
devastating in hospitals, it's devastating in nursing homes, so anywhere where you have vulnerable populations. But again, it's also a challenge in community settings, like on a cruise ship, on
Mm.
sports teams, that kind of thing. uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's making changes for that.
Sure. Well, I mean, it certainly sounds like you faced quite a few challenges, as you say. I mean, the fact that one, you've had to come out of the lab because there's certain restrictions there. I know that, at the moment now, however, we are starting to get positive news on vaccinations. Like in the UK, we seem to be flying with it, and we're getting dates as to when we can meet up with friends and family and this and that, which is fantastic. I'm even thinking about booking a holiday, which is something I just haven't even thought about
Yeah,
for
what's that?
is that, I think that's from June, June time. We can look at booking holidays again. Oh my God, can't wait for
Wow.
it. Um, but look, on the subject of, continuing to wash hands and things, which is predominant. I know that you've got a TED talk that you've covered a lot on that. And when I first reached out, I was like, oh, it's the hand washing place that I'm speaking to. Um, but look, what are your thoughts on, say, the vaccines and what's in store for us all in the world of, I guess, um, you know, avoiding germs and avoiding the virus, avoiding neurovirus, avoiding coronavirus as we head on through 2021?
Yeah, so it's such a good question. For anyone who has the opportunity to get the vaccine, please do. I hear people talking about their concern of, but they made it so quickly, I can't trust it. And listen, messenger RNA vaccine development has happened for years and years and years.
Mm,
It's just, so that technology, it's a previous technology and stuff. We've been working on it with other viruses in the past. And the reason we were able to get these vaccines developed so quickly is it was a large number of people from very diverse
mm,
backgrounds. So why you had government coming together, you had international interactions, you had interactions across different pharmaceutical companies,
mm,
everyone really coming together to get these out. So they are safe. Please please get them when you can, especially for the people who can't get them. So be part of that herd immunity. If I In conversations with family who are, despite the fact that they have someone in their family who's an infectious disease microbiologist and believes in the science and has been tracking the science this whole
mm.
year, they still come to me like, I'm just too nervous, I can't do it. And they're like, it's not safe. And I look at them and I say, listen, if I had access to the vaccine right now, I would roll up your sleeve and stab you. So that's how firmly I believe in it. So yeah, so get the vaccine. Um, take advantage of the miracle of science and
Mm,
all the hard work that's been done in order to get us to this point. In terms of, in the interim, while you're waiting for the vaccine, unfortunately, I feel like this time is one of the more dangerous times because you have some of the population who is getting vaccinated, but may
mm.
not fully understand that vaccine does not mean cure. It's not a
Yeah.
treatment, it's a preventative. And so you may still get the SARS-CoV vaccine in you, and you may still replicate the vaccine, which means you could still transmit it. You may
Mm,
get very mild disease. So you're being protected from severe disease. So you won't be hospitalized and that kind of thing. But it doesn't mean that you're fully immune to acquiring it or giving it. And
mm.
so that, I think, is something that we need to do a better job of making sure people understand that. And so while you have some of the population being vaccinated, some are waiting, it's critical. Maintain the 6 feet distance. Um,
Follow the guidelines basically then, because I mean that's been one of my concerns, is that the more people that get vaccinated and kind of think, hey, it's all okay now, they start to flood out, And then I think, one of the things that you said to me previously was the solution to pollution is through dilution, if I've got
Yes,
that correct.
you did.
Uh,
Nice.
and I just thought, well, if everyone starts flooding out and mingling in the same way that they did previously, the rates are just going to go back up.
Exactly.
And then we'll just kind of be in that kind of yo-yo scenario where we're never fully, getting the result that we want.
Yeah, it's certainly going to make things a lot longer and more difficult, is why you still have people who aren't vaccinated. They're still vulnerable. You still have hospitals that are recovering from being incredibly overwhelmed and burdened. Getting personal protective equipment is still a challenge. So it's all of those things kind of coming together of it's really, we need people to stop looking at, this isn't something that just affects you. You need to think outwardly, and how could this affect other people? And so, wonderful if you're vaccinated. I'm very happy for that. But still, you need to be responsible and keep awareness of people outside of you, for family, for strangers, that you could still be unknowingly passing on virus to people that aren't protected yet. And so it'll be a while before we get everybody safe. So following those standard measures, social distancing, mask wearing, all of those are truly incredibly important to keep doing.
And you know what, funny, just to mirror that's exactly the same sort of message that has come from the Queen over here in the UK just recently, saying pretty much exactly that. Just trying to get people to be a bit patriotic and not just think about themselves and do it for the greater cause. So look, massively agree on that, and hopefully we will soon all start to get out. I know for me, there's hopefully a holiday on the cards when it's all safe. For yourself, what are the plans when restrictions are starting to get relaxed? Clearly you've got dogs, you like to get out and walk dogs, but what else are you planning to sort of get out and enjoy back to normal life outside of LivOnyx and the world of pharmaceuticals and everything else?
Yeah, and I think so on a personal level, really no longer taking for granted the last time you hugged someone, right? I think back to last February and the last trip that we were able to take to see family in New York. And it's now been over a year. And so really not taking for granted those opportunities where you get to hug the people that you love and it's safe to do so. From the professional side of things, it really is just continuing to mobilize change, to get out and have voices be heard around infection prevention, and this idea of, we've all now lived through a pandemic. It is incredibly difficult. I wish I could say we're never going to have to deal with this again in our lifetime, but I can't say that because there's no guarantee. The reality is viruses, bacteria, fungi, they're incredibly adaptable. They change, they become resistant. So things that are working today may not work tomorrow. And so we need to be vigilant. Yes, it'll be nice to breathe a sigh of relief and fresh air and not have it be filtered through a mask. But we need to remain vigilant. And we need to take kind of those lessons learned about how to handle a global crisis moving forward, and how do we again, not prioritize self, and we do really look at the community at large. And yes, it's inconvenient to be in lockdown. It's inconvenient to not be able to go to the grocery store when you want to. But those are things that are critical to helping to save lives. And
Definitely.
So I think on that front, LivOnyx will continue to share a voice and be advocates for infection prevention. We are very stubborn in wanting to get our funding, no matter how hard it is. Our investors are out there. We will find them, and we want to be part of a solution globally to really be able to bring a technology that could save lives to everybody, not just here in the States.
Fantastic. Well, look, I think it's an amazing story. And look, I just hope that you can achieve that goal that you've kind of set yourself. I know that you've got an interesting TED Talk that is online and available through YouTube. Of course, this show will be available wherever people get their podcasts, and also on YouTube. But I guess on the professional front, whether it's investors, people with just wanting to learn more, a little bit more about LivOnyx, what's the best way to reach out to yourself?
Sure. So find me on LinkedIn, both me, the company, our website, www.livonyx.com.
Mhm.
I'm not hard to find and stuff. So happy to reach out. Love having conversations with fellow entrepreneurs. Even for all the investor conversations we've had that turned into a no thank you for now, we've learned something new from everyone. And so
Yeah.
I'm very I'm a very big believer in having a growth mindset, and every opportunity is an opportunity to learn. And so, happy to learn from other people and having those conversations and continuing dialogue, and just kind of existing to learn new things.
Great stuff. Well, look, Carmela, it's been fantastic having you on the show. Stay resourceful, stay positive, keep doing what you're doing. And look, no doubt I will keep in touch to sort of hear how it's all going over the next sort of year or so. And look, if there's anyone out there who does want to invest or reach out to Carmela, you've got the details here, but we'll also tag in everything on our YouTube channel and with the podcast that we put out also. But look, Carmela, thanks again for coming on the show. Have a fantastic day your end.
Thank you. And James, again, thank you so much for the thoughtful questions and for the invitation and just the opportunity to be able to share our story and to be part of the Huxley Morton family now.
Great stuff. Well, look, thanks again for coming on. Speak soon.
Thank you.